Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Running Our Race. Today I'm going to be talking about returning / the first love. Now, when I think about a race, obviously, if we're talking about a racetrack, we know that it's in a circle, right? And I had discussed this in another episode about circles. And I tied it into friendships and what circles we're running in, right? But today, I wanted to tie it more into, okay, when we go around, we normally end up at the same point, right? At the end, which is where we started. However, I was remembering Revelations 2:4. I was going over it to prepare for this episode. I just kind of was left pondering, why would someone leave their first love? As I was reading it, I scrolled up a little more, just a few verses, and I went to Revelations 2:2. And I'm going to read all the way to verse 5. So, I know your works, your toil, and your patient endurance, and how you cannot bear with those who are evil, but have tested those who call themselves apostles and are not, and found them to be false. I know you are enduring patiently and bearing up my name's sake, for you have not grown weary. But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, repent and do the works you did at first. If not, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent. Now, I took a lot of things from this. First off, there's endurance, which we can tie into endurance, persevering. It can tie into that as well. Still here, you have not grown weary. Now, here I see someone who is doing a lot of good things, but they have forgotten to put God first. When I think about this Bible verse, a lot of times I've seen it connected to almost really like a religiosity standpoint. So where it's like almost you're too religious, like where it's no longer also a relationship. Doing things because you're supposed to, not because you're doing it with love. So if today's my day to serve, you're doing it because, okay, I have to serve, You're not doing it with, okay, I want to go serve. I want to make sure God is glorified and I want to do my best. And, I just want to do everything good for God. Not so that the pastors can see me or my leader can see me or my crush can see me serving and they're like, oh my gosh, this woman of God or this man of God, right? I also think about the point of today's episode is where I want to go with my second thought when I thought about this verse. And it is, so what did they do to fall away or abandon the love that they had at first? Because I think right there is where we could tie it into when you're running a race. Sometimes you get sidetracked, right? So there's, the little tortoise in the hare video right now, just thinking about it. The hare thought he was going to win the race, right? But he ends up taking a nap on the side, thinking, oh, the tortoise is so slow that I could take a nap and I'll still win. But they end up, taking that rest, taking the nap, and the tortoise ends up winning. The mentality of, oh, I'm going to win, or, oh, I can leave these things to later, or I can push aside my devotional time, I can push aside my prayer time, I can push aside this, that, but still expecting to get fed at church is kind of ironic in a way, So that could be one way. And I also went in and I clicked on the part that says, thou has left, is the phrase on G863. And it was just telling me, okay, so it's to send forth in various applications, cry, forgive, forsake, lay aside, leave, let alone, be, go, have, omit, put, send away, remit, suffer, yield up. One of the ones that caught my eye the most was the lay aside one, because like I said, what things that we used to do, for God, and that we stopped doing. And honestly, I'm going to start off with myself, preaching to myself, and I did. Yesterday, I was getting ready to go to sleep, and I was thinking about something that God had told me in the middle of service on Sunday. And, well, not in the middle of service, but, it was, this, I guess, prophetic time, right? It was in between the worship and the prophetic time. And in that moment, I saw myself in my room. In church, God just reminded me things from maybe a few months ago. At home yesterday, God was reminding me about my childhood and things that I used to do. It hit me really hard because I was like, bro, how do you go from that, grow up, fall away from God, kind of like this verse, right? Even though I was maybe serving during parts of those years, I don't know if I really had that love. And that brought me to the New Living Translation, Revelations 2:4, because of the wording. And it says, "But I have this complaint against you. You don't love me or each other as you did at first." That hit me really hard because I was like, man, what do you mean you don't love each other as you did at first? And I know that there's a saying, I don't know if it's biblical or not. I have a feeling it's not, or if it has biblical foundation. I think it may have biblical foundation, but it's not from the Bible. And it's like, how are you going to love someone else if you don't even love yourself? I think a lot of people tie it into the Bible with, how are you going to love others properly if you don't love God first? That's really all I want to touch on, is reflecting, on where our love is and how our love is, evaluating ourselves. What are things that we used to do when we were on fire for God that we don't do anymore? And I even heard some preachings over the weekend, and all of this was tying in together, and maybe I didn't understand at the time, but now I do, and I feel like if God is telling me this, I think that it's something that other people are also needing, because I've heard it in quite a few preachings over this past few days, like literally like maybe 4 days total. I've heard like it in 5 different preachings, or 10, I don't know. But I have a feeling that God really just wants us to return to him completely. Not just surrendering, but like actually living it, like not putting aside what is important, but making place for him, giving him the adequate time, the adequate space, and the place to move. And so with that being said, thank you for tuning in to this episode. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I pray that this episode impacted you in a great way. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace out.